Did you know that some of the clearest insights about today's fast-changing world come from people who've lived through nearly a century of it? It might sound surprising, but 80-year-olds often carry a kind of quiet wisdom that only time can give. And when they talk about what life was like when they were young compared to now, it's not just nostalgia. It's a roadmap, a reflection of where we've been, and maybe a caution about where we're heading. In this video, we're breaking down some key differences that people in their 80s often point out when comparing today's world with the one they grew up in. These aren't just surface-level changes. They go deep into values, relationships, technology, safety, and even what it means to live a good life. Each of these points comes from real conversations with seniors, insights from sociologists, and personal stories that shine a light on the incredible shifts they've witnessed and what they wish younger generations understood. Stick around to the end, because the final point may surprise you. It's something most people overlook, but it could shift how you see your place in the world today. Let's dive in. The death of slow living. There's a quiet grief many people in their 80s carry, but they don't always name it directly. It's not about technology, politics, or even culture. It's about time, and more specifically, how we use it. In their youth, the world wasn't just slower. It demanded patience in almost everything. If you wanted to hear a song, you waited for it on the radio. If you needed to get somewhere, you walked or waited for the bus. Letters took days to arrive. Meals took time to prepare. Conversations happened face-to-face, not in comment sections. I spoke with Evelyn, 84, who said something that stuck with me. We had empty time. We called it boredom, but it was beautiful. That's when you got creative. That's when you noticed things. Back then, boredom wasn't a crisis. It was a canvas. Kids would lie in the grass and stare at the clouds. People would sit on the porch and simply listen to the wind. There was no pressure to be productive every minute. You had time to think, to breathe, to be. Today, the world is so fast that many seniors say they feel dizzy just watching it. Every minute is filled, scrolling, checking, replying, consuming. We've traded stillness for stimulation. And the cost? Peace, presence, perspective. Younger generations often equate slowness with laziness, but for seniors who lived through the age of analog, they know the truth. Slowness is where life happens. Think about it. Meals were events, not tasks. Weekends were for family, not catch-up work. Mornings started with quiet, not alerts. Gerald, 85, told me about the Sunday routine in his childhood. The stores were closed. Phones didn't ring. You walked to church, then home to eat, then sat outside with your neighbors. Nothing was urgent, but everything felt important. That contrast is painful to them now, because they see us burning out in real time, rushing from one thing to the next, multitasking through dinner, losing sleep to keep up, and all the while, wondering why we feel so empty. The irony? We've invented more tools to save time than ever, yet we feel like we have none. The slow life wasn't perfect. They'll admit that freely. There was hardship, less convenience, fewer options. But there was also something sacred about the rhythm of the days, a sense that time belonged to you, not your inbox, that the people you were with deserved your full attention. Marilyn, 86, said it best. When someone came over, you turned the TV off. Today, people leave it on while you're talking. Even the machines get more attention than the person in the room. So what's the lesson here? It's not about turning back the clock. It's about reclaiming a little of what we've lost. Because when you slow down, you notice more. You think deeper. You feel more human. Try sitting in silence for 5 minutes without your phone. Make one meal this week without rushing. Call someone instead of texting. Walk somewhere you'd normally drive. These small acts aren't just nostalgic. They're healing. They're how we reconnect not just with others, but with ourselves. Because, in the end, nobody looks back on life and says, "I wish I'd answered more emails." But they do say, "I wish I'd paid more attention. I wish I'd been more present. I wish I'd slowed down." So ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you did nothing and didn't feel guilty about it? For many 80-year-olds, slow living wasn't just a lifestyle, it was a kind of wisdom. And in our race to modernize everything, we may have lost something vital: the ability to simply be. Number 2. Relationships. Then versus now. When you sit down with someone in their 80s and ask about relationships, their stories often sound like something out of a novel, full of simplicity, depth, and a kind of patience that feels almost foreign today. In their youth, relationships weren't instant. They unfolded slowly, over time, face to face, often within the communities they were born into. School dances, church gatherings, local diners, backyard barbecues. These were the dating apps of their generation. I remember talking with Walter, 86, who met his wife Anne at a 4th of July picnic in 1957. "She dropped her soda, and I rushed to grab it," he said, laughing. "We spent the rest of the afternoon talking. I had to ask her parents for permission to call her on the house phone. There was no texting to say, 'Thinking of you. You showed up. You proved it.'" Compare that to today's world. Modern relationships often start with a swipe, a quick text, a curated profile where a person's best angles and highlight reels are front and center. There's speed, yes, accessibility, yes, but seniors often wonder, where's the soul? In their youth, love wasn't about perfect compatibility scores or instant chemistry. It was about showing up, growing together, and committing before all the answers were known. If you fought, you worked through it, not ghosted. If someone was late, you waited, you trusted. If problems arose, you didn't look for an upgrade, you found a solution. Patience was the glue that held relationships together. Betty, 87, put it this way: "You didn't expect magic every day. Some days were hard, but you chose each other, again and again. That's what made it real." Today, relationships can feel transactional, measured by what someone provides rather than who they are. "What can you do for me?" has replaced "What can we build together?" Many seniors worry that young people are taught to look for the perfect person instead of learning to be the right partner. And here's another difference they often mention: community involvement. Back then, relationships didn't exist in a vacuum. You met someone's family early on. Friends, neighbors, and churches played active roles in supporting couples, mentoring them, and sometimes even holding them accountable. Today, with more transient lifestyles and digital connections, that social fabric around relationships has weakened. Many couples navigate hardships alone, without the web of support older generations took for granted. Evelyn, 84, shared, "When my husband and I fought, his mother would invite me over for tea. She didn't take sides. She reminded me why I loved him." Imagine that today, where often families are distant, friends are busy, and social media cheers on breakup culture more than reconciliation. Of course, not everything about the past was perfect. Seniors will be the first to admit that some stayed in unhealthy relationships because of social pressure. Today's independence and empowerment, especially for women, is a profound and needed shift. But even acknowledging those improvements, they still mourn the loss of perseverance, the willingness to work, to weather seasons of distance, and to trust that true intimacy is built brick by brick, not handed to you fully formed. Their advice to us? Love isn't found, it's made, it's earned. It's the product of 1,000 small choices to stay, to listen, to forgive. So what's the takeaway? Maybe we need to slow down. Maybe we need to choose patience over passion sometimes. Maybe we need to stop chasing the perfect story and start writing it together, chapter by chapter. Because when you ask an 80-year-old what mattered most in their life, they almost never talk about their careers, their travels, or their achievements first. They talk about who they loved, who stood by them, who made the hard days better. And that's a truth that hasn't changed, even if the world around it has. Trust in institutions has eroded. When you talk to people in their 80s about the changes they've witnessed, one theme rises again and again. And it isn't about technology or fashion. It's about trust. Trust used to be woven into the very fabric of daily life. You trusted that your doctor had your best interest at heart. You trusted that your child's teacher was there to guide and protect. You trusted that your local police officer would help you, not hurt you. You even trusted that elected leaders, though imperfect, were genuinely trying to serve the public good. Gerald, 82, told me, "We didn't think the government was perfect. We didn't think every leader was a saint. But we didn't start by assuming everyone was lying to us either. There was a basic faith that most people in positions of power were trying, at least, to do the right thing. Today, that faith feels broken. It didn't happen overnight. It cracked with political scandals. It eroded with corporate greed. It was worn down by news cycles revealing betrayal after betrayal, from poisoned water supplies to hidden corporate frauds, from medical misinformation to scandals in churches and schools that were once considered untouchable pillars of the community. Walter, 84, said something haunting. "It's not just that we don't trust the news or the politicians anymore. It's that we don't trust our neighbors to tell the truth. It's that deep. And this loss of trust hasn't just made us skeptical. It's made us lonely, angry, and afraid." In the past, communities were built on shared institutions, the same post office, the same school boards, the same doctors who delivered your children and tended your parents, the same newspapers reporting on your town's milestones. These weren't faceless bureaucracies. They were human relationships. People you could look in the eye. People who lived in the same neighborhood, sent their kids to the same schools, sat in the same pews. Today, seniors say it feels like everything has gotten too big, too corporate, too impersonal. The bank isn't run by your neighbor anymore. It's run by a call center 5 states away. The local paper closed down, and now you get your news from a giant network you can't even fully trust. Marilyn, 85, said it plainly. Institutions stopped feeling like us and started feeling like them. And when you start thinking of everything as them, you stop believing you have a say. And that loss of collective ownership has consequences. Civic engagement drops. People stop voting, stop volunteering, stop caring. Distrust hardens into cynicism. Communities fray. When institutions fail to live up to their promises, and when people no longer feel connected to the structures that are supposed to protect and serve them, society doesn't just suffer from bad policies, it suffers from spiritual exhaustion. But here's what 80-year-olds want us to understand. It doesn't have to stay this way. They remind us that trust isn't something that only big people in power control. It starts small. It starts when you show up at a town meeting instead of complaining online. It starts when you shake your mailman's hand and thank your school teachers. It starts when you build real human relationships inside the systems you interact with every day. Because trust isn't just something you have or don't have. It's something you rebuild, brick by brick, conversation by conversation. Betty, 88, summed it up beautifully. If we want a world we can trust again, we have to live like people who deserve to be trusted. Tell the truth. Show up. Care. Not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. Technology. A blessing and a curse. Ask any 80-year-old, and they'll likely say the world today is nothing short of amazing when it comes to technology. You can call someone across the globe, order groceries from your bed, or learn anything with a few taps. But here's the twist. Many don't envy us. Why? Because with all the convenience came dependence. On screens, on updates, on instant gratification. Marilyn, 85, said, "We had less, but we were never bored. We used imagination. Today, everything's in your hand, but the joy of discovery is missing." Seniors aren't anti-tech, but they caution us, don't lose your soul to the screen. Use the tool, don't become it. We used to know our neighbors. When 80-year-olds talk about the world they grew up in, one thing comes up again and again. Something so basic, so taken for granted back then, that it's almost shocking how rare it's become today. They knew their neighbors, not just their names, their stories, their children's birthdays, their hardships and triumphs. Betty, 88, remembered it vividly. The lady 2 doors down made the best lemon pie you ever tasted. If you were sick, she sent a slice over without even asking. Mr. Gordon on the corner was a retired mechanic. If your bike chain broke, he fixed it before dinner. The kids called him Uncle Joe, even though he wasn't anybody's uncle. Community wasn't something you scheduled into your life. It was your life. Front porches were full. Sidewalks had children playing hopscotch and riding bikes until sunset. Nobody needed an official neighborhood watch sign. Everyone naturally kept an eye out for each other. If someone didn't show up for church or missed their daily walk, someone knocked on the door to check in. Not out of nosiness, but out of love. Today, many people can live for years in the same apartment complex or suburban street and barely know the faces around them. We nod politely, maybe exchange a few words at the mailbox, but rarely do we sit down for coffee or share a meal. And that shift didn't just happen because people got meaner. Life got faster. Work took people farther from home. Screens pulled attention indoors. Safety fears, media-fueled anxieties, and the privatization of our lives have all quietly built walls between us, invisible but deeply felt. Walter, 85, put it simply. It's not that people are colder now. It's that they're exhausted, distracted, protective. We're all locked in our own little castles, and nobody lowers the drawbridge anymore. But the consequences are real. Increased loneliness, now called a public health crisis by many experts. Rising rates of depression and anxiety, especially among all age groups. A weakening of the social safety net that once existed outside of government programs. The simple, neighborly kindness that used to catch people when they stumbled. Because here's what people in their 80s remember. When tragedy struck, when a house caught fire, when someone lost a job, when a child fell sick, it wasn't just family that rallied. It was the block, the street, the town. You didn't have to face hardship alone because everyone saw themselves as part of the same fragile, beautiful web. And it wasn't just in hard times. Celebrations, too, were shared. A new baby meant casseroles arriving at the doorstep. A child's graduation meant balloons on the mailbox. Holidays meant open doors, shared meals, and laughter spilling out onto the sidewalk. Knowing your neighbors didn't just offer practical help, it gave people a profound sense of belonging, of being seen, of being valued, not because of what you accomplished, but simply because you were there. The advice seniors give us today is painfully simple. If you want to feel less alone, if you want your world to feel safer, warmer, more human again, start small. Wave at the family you always see walking their dog. Bring cookies to the new couple who just moved in. Offer help if you see someone struggling with groceries. Host a backyard barbecue and invite the whole street. Learn the names of the people who live around you and use them. You don't have to become best friends with every neighbor, but you do have to be willing to be seen and to see others. Because neighborhoods aren't just places. They're made of people. And like any living thing, they need tending. They need smiles, conversations, forgiveness, patience, and the simple, radical decision to care. If you're still watching this, you're probably someone who values wisdom. And here's the truth. The past isn't better just because it's old, but it does carry lessons that can help us move forward better. Today's world is fast, digital, and at times overwhelming. But in the eyes of those who've lived longest, the things that matter haven't changed. Love, trust, time, presence, and connection. So ask yourself, what would an 80-year-old think of your daily life? Would they see joy or burnout, closeness or isolation, purpose or distraction? The good news? You don't have to wait until you're 80 to make changes. Start small, slow down, be present. Remember your neighbors. Call someone you love instead of texting. You've just heard some reflections from those who've lived through world wars, moon landings, social revolutions, and now the digital age. Their stories aren't just nostalgia. They're a mirror, and maybe even a guide. If you learned something today, leave a comment below and share which insight stuck with you the most. And if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's next. Thank you for spending time with us today. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and don't forget to ask your elders what they remember. You might be surprised by what you learn.